there's a very unique person that decides to sell comic books, to get into a business to sell comic books, right? You're kind of not right in the head a little bit. um you love something so much that you're like, hey, I want to share this with people. And so those are my people, and I really enjoyed like dealing with everybody across the board.
Hi, it's Adam, and this is Comic Industry Insiders, a weekly podcast where I get to talk to the people behind the scenes of the comic book industry and get to know what makes them tick. Get to know the tips and tricks that you can use for your business or career in comics. This week, I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. We've got Shawn Big Clutch Kirkham. Shawn is one of the team that helped build Skybound Entertainment, along with Robert Kirkman and Cena Grace and many of those behind the scenes. He tells us stories about how that business came together, about how the brilliance of Robert Kirkman gets that thing launched, and he discusses how you can see a Robert Kirkman coming, right? He also talks about dealing with comics retailers, how to jump into projects that you have never done before and nobody else has either. Shawn, did I mention that he completely changed the face of live selling and is even announces a product that they're going to begin on his channel soon. So please check it out. He is an incredible creative person. He is an incredible personality. And he's got a voice for radio, which we get a little piece of. All right. Without further ado, Shawn Kirkham. And, oh, by the way, if you ever meet him, ask him what Big Clutch means, because I totally forgot. How you doing, buddy?
I mean, stunned by that introduction. I mean, I don't think that a lot of the things you said are warranted, but I'll take them. I've been trained to be humble.
Do you think is there any bit there that you would say that we is overly, like, I mean, you were there on the ground building one of the most remarkable companies in publishing, and then even reshaped that to do your own business. I think that's I mean, anything I got wrong?
I mean, you know, I don't know. I'm not going to change what you said, but I do feel that it's hard. You know, like I can still hear Robert Kirkman yelling in my ear, like, "You didn't do shit. What are you doing?" And look, Robert was never that verbally abusive, just emotionally. And
yeah, I got you. But the voice in your head is Robert Kirkman saying you didn't do shit.
It's not that specifically. It's honestly like I learned so much from Robert over the years, and really one of the biggest things is truly to be humble about what we do, because it was never like one person doing the thing. Like, you know, Robert, his whole thing has been like the team, the group, the whole, as a company, you know, the company, whether it's his creative teams or whatever. So it's never one person that does it. So it's hard. I always find it hard to kind of in my brain to go like, oh, I did all these things. Like, we did all these things, and we, you know, I was so lucky to kind of stumble into that position, and then also to stumble in with the, you know, the guys that we worked with and that we brought into the company, and up and down and all around. Like, I had an amazing 12 years there, and we got to do some of the craziest stuff that honestly, like, I don't know if we'll see certain things that we did during those early Walking Dead days ever happen again in the comics industry, which is kind of crazy. It was just a kind of once in a lifetime situation, right?
It's interesting, just from outside of that company, as somebody who works really in independent comics a lot, how often Walking Dead is brought up as the exception, right? It is brought up as the thing you learn from. But also, is it even possible? I guess that's a really great question. Is it possible for a Walking Dead in that way that it was a seemingly very small, two not unknown creators, but not huge, doing a black and white book and about a genre that was a little overtread at the time? Like, is there room for that, something like that now? Do you think that is there a Walking Dead right now that is on the shelves that we're not even noticing?
I'm sure there is something out there, whether it's on the shelves now or not. I don't know, but it really comes down to the creators and like their drive behind them. I think the thing that people forget about The Walking Dead is the fact that it was consistent. It was always there
Yeah.
on that first, or I think it was like the first or second Wednesday of the month. You knew that when you went to the shop, that book was going to be there every month, guaranteed. And that is the biggest thing in the comics industry, right? Like
Yeah.
consistency, being able to have your product always there. Like, Robert always was, nothing, it could never be late. And that's, why in the early days, like when they had to switch from, the situation with Tony into Charlie, he's like, hey, this book has to come out every single month. And I think that I hate this analogy, but like a zombie trudging along, it was always there and it never stopped, and it was very consistent. And I think that helped out in the early days of just like building that core fan base. And like once it got up to issue 100 and it's now a TV show, I mean, that's when the real gears and the real like the faucet got turned on to full blast, and we saw that like, oh my gosh, this is a life changing, world changing. It was like so big,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
it was really the fact that like Robert was able to be consistent with it and keep it out. And we see a lot of other creators like, hey man, I can, an artist like Charlie Adlard is a unicorn, like a guy who can crank out, I think he was at one point he's able to pencil and ink an issue like in like 12 days or something like that. It's like such a crazy fast, like he's able to knock things out. Yeah,
What?
he's so crazy fast. Like when he turns on, like that's the way we did that period of time where Walking Dead was bi-weekly for a period of time, and he was just
Yeah.
bang 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 bang. And that was also, he did help with Stefano, who came in to ink his stuff then. But like when Charlie
Yeah.
does it all himself, like he can turn a book out, in less than 4 weeks, a full book, inked, all that stuff. Where you have creators, other pencilers are like, hey, like my style, I can do 6 weeks, 7 weeks to do a full issue, right? You get like guys like Dan
Yeah.
Mora who could probably do, 14 books a month if he really wanted to, because that guy is just a beast. You have like there are dudes, these unicorns who can do it. And when you're able to kind of tap into those guys, you can really kind of get the most out of what you get with the comic series.
Yeah, actually, you just reminded me as you're telling me about when Stefano Quadiano, when he came on, he was actually working with us at Valiant, and he said, I gotta go. I have a once in a lifetime opportunity to go do this." And we're like, "Oh, god damn it!"
No, Robert definitely knows how to like to find the right guys and make them
Yeah.
offers that they literally cannot refuse. He's like, I gotta do this Walking Dead thing. Okay, I'm gonna make, those. I've got some pages from Charlie and Stefano, together when they were selling the artwork, and I'm like, just even be able to like sell Walking Dead art is kind of, I mean, that's gonna be a life changing part too, right? So
No
yeah,
shit, right? Oh man, no, that 100%. You guys, I mean, what you built there is unicorn. You used that word earlier, and so many things about it were just.
yeah.
It was just magic. It was just lightning in a bottle, and I think knowing that is also maybe part of that secret sauce. I want to dig further into this, but I want to go a little bit back and talk about kind of early days for you. How did you first get involved in comics? Like how do you find yourself in that
I
position?
mean, I look first back. Comic
Sure.
fan since I was a little kid. I remember picking up.
Yeah.
We always had comics in the house. Whether it's Looney Tunes or Walt Disney. Porky Pig. I remember as a kid. Uncle Scrooge. Getting my first books at like the Thrifties on the spinner rack. While on
Yeah.
vacation. And then going to my first comic shop, Comic Dreams in Manteca, California. Rest in peace. But then like, I always stayed a fan, and so I moved from you know my world of my hometown and being just like a guy, moved down to Los Angeles in 2000, got a job in the music industry. uh when I worked at Sony Music in Santa Monica, I would go to a comic shop called Heidi Ho Comics. I met
Oh
a
yeah.
really young kid named Cena Grace, who was a clerk
Oh
there.
yeah.
and this is in
Oh,
like the early 2000s, so probably 2004 or 5, maybe a little bit later. I think Cena was probably 17 when he started working there. We became friends because we talked about Phantom Planet and music and stuff all the time, and talked about comics, and didn't know like his love for comics was so infectious. We just stayed friends. And then 2010, Cena had got hired by Robert and DA David Alpert over at Skybound to be the first employee, kind of the editorial director, and do all their stuff. And Cena was like, "Hey, like he knew that I went to Comic-Con every year with some buddies, and he's like, "Hey, would you want to go to Comic-Con this year? We're going to do this Walking Dead thing. They're going to announce the TV show. We need a couple." I'd worked retail. I managed a record store in the late '90s. He was like, retail. So at least you can do the cash register and stuff. I'm like, dude, absolutely. He's like, we'll get you. You get the sales pitch was the best. He's like, you get a free hotel room, and all the food and booze you can eat and drink. I was like, that sounds great. You saved me a ton of money. Everyone knows Comic-Con is so expensive. Awesome. Little did we know that it turned out to be like we were working like 12 plus hour days because no one else knew what they were doing. They were all just other friends of Cena's who were like assistants at this studio or this agency. So it was my buddy and myself, David Andre, and Tim Daniel were like the three kind of like, I say adults just because we were older than everyone else, but we just kind of like ran the booth. And then Cena would go off and do panels, and we'd be there doing, slinging trades and stuff. And I was just like a volunteer that year. And after the show, which was crazy too, because that San Diego Comic-Con was bananas, because that was the first year they played the trailer. So they did this big panel. I think I want to say it was maybe Hall H. They played the trailer, and then they're like, "Hey, we're gonna do this cast signing at your booth." And so we had, honestly, Adam, I think our booth was like, we split a 20 by 40 with Image. So we had half, Image had the back half, and we had just we had like 2 8-foot tables set up. They were just draped, and we had like Andy Lincoln and Sarah Wayne Callies and John Bernthal and Frank Darabont. All these guys are sitting here at these tables.
Yeah.
And just this massive people came over with these, like, we had printed out these really cool like promo poster things, and they were signing them, and Norman Reedus was there too. It was bananas. Like I don't think people really realize like how weird and wild that first day, because after that, like, those guys couldn't go anywhere without security and handlers. Like that time it was just so free form. So we had a great weekend. We were selling Walking Dead trades and compendiums, like just boom, boom, boom. Everyone's like, "Hey, what's this? I want to read this." I never saw that in my life. I was like, "This is crazy." Did so well that weekend that Robert and Dave said, "Hey, what do you guys? Have you ever been to New York?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I love it." He's like, "Do you want to go to New York Comic-Con?" So invited Dave and I to New York Comic-Con. We did that show. Then I did Long Beach Comic-Con, which is the same weekend that the show came out. And that was a really fun one here. And then WonderCon right after that. So first in 2011, the first like big show of the year was WonderCon. And I think that was one of the last ones in San Francisco. So we did that show. And then shortly after that is when Robert and DA like made me offer to come into the company and said, "Hey, would you like to come on?" And so I left my gig at Capitol Records to go there, and then just started figuring out. And at the time, it was just myself and Cena Grace's. Like, we shared a cubicle in the back of the Circle of Confusion offices. So Circle of Confusion is a talent agency that's owned by David Alpert, and they just had one cubicle in the back of this office. And Cena and I are like side by side, sitting next to each other. And Cena, of course, took the most space because he just had the most stuff. And I was just kind of shoved in the corner, and I'm a gigantic fat dude. And so I'm like squished here. I'm like, "Sorry, Cena, I didn't mean to bump into you and stuff." But those early days were so crazy, and we were just making up as we went, right? And through the first few years of just like, the company's growing slow. We added a couple people here and there, but the popularity of Walking Dead was going crazy. It's like, at shows, like, we had volunteers who were all our friends. They were people that we knew from colleges or back home. My buddy Dan Peterson, who now he's still at Skybound, but I brought him in because we worked at the record store together, and he was part of our Comic-Con crew. So I brought him in. And so, like, it was really kind of fun to bring in our friends and do all this wild stuff. And now the company, it's, after all the success, and it's a big corporate, behemoth right now with all the stuff that they're doing. So kind of wild to see how it was like those early days of like startup pop up like, hey, we're doing this all ourselves. And now it's like, we've got corporate policies and structure and all this stuff. Like, I miss this stuff. I don't miss this stuff.
When you look back on that time, is there, I mean, I'm going to ask you to be a little self-promotionally. I know that that's not, your go-to, but like,
I'm wearing my own hat. I'm very self-promotional.
Yeah, that's a good point. But like, if you look back on that time, do you have is there something that where you brought to that period that kind of, you brought that big clutch energy to the early Skybound that like you feel like you're proud of is still there?
Yeah, I mean, those early days of just trying to find ways to just make something happen, right? Whether you knew what you're doing or not, like, whether it was, I mean, I think my first task at the company was to really, like, the first thing I was out of my element, they were like, hey, we need you to learn how to make lunch boxes. And so I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, go make lunch boxes. So I like went on Alibaba and like I started like emailing 10 companies and like, hey, do you make lunch boxes? And so like I had to like figure out how to make a lunchbox, how to contract with a company in China and handle all this stuff, get shipments in, where we're going to store all this stuff, sell it, solicit through Diamond so we can put them into comic shops and do this whole thing. And like, I think like those early days of just my willingness to just kind of jump in and figure something out was a big plus, because they were just like, they would say something and I would try to make it happen. That was just, that's all you do, and I think you're very much the same way too. Like, what's the weirdest idea that, Dead Nash would come up with at Valiant? You're like, all right, frickin', I'm going to figure it out. Like, let's go, like those little things, like you have to be that little bit of like crazy to just go with it. I mean, there were things I would say, nah, dude, we're not going to do that. That doesn't make any sense. But, you, for the most part, you're going to find a way to do the thing.
Well, I think there's a certain amount of self-confidence that comes into, I always go back to when I was raised by, mostly working class folks, but like anything that you have to build or anything you have to do, like, no problem. I'll just go to Home Depot and I'll talk to a guy and I'll figure it out and I'll come back and do it. It's not rocket science. Like that was sort of energy is what I was raised with. And I think that just kind of comes into this. You're right. So somebody says, go make a lunchbox. I've never made a lunchbox before, but how hard can it be?
Absolutely.
I think that energy comes from somewhere, and I don't think everybody has that energy.
Very true. It's been very true. It is hard for some people to kind of be able to kind of just go and just do it. You need to be told, and you find a way, you make or break it, right?
Where do you think, so from a business standpoint, what do you think is what are those early decisions that were made by Robert and David, and maybe even you and Cena? What are the things that make Skybound the juggernaut that it is? Because we've seen plenty of comics be made into TV series, right? That's a very common thing, so much so that it's almost even part of the business model. But few true cultural shifts like you guys were able to create. What were some of those decisions that were made then that have seen repercussions?
It's probably one of the most remarkable things like ever was the deal that they made with AMC. You've seen it. So when you sell a property off to a studio, they take everything, right? They have rights to everything. So you can still publish your books or whatever, but anything that comes on in terms of the L&M, which is the licensing and merchandising, is all owned by the studio. Because Robert in the early days had produced his own merchandise. He'd made t-shirts and he'd made statues, and, shout out to Robert for always being like, I'm going to just make a thing. I want to do it. I'm going to make it. Right. So because they had set that precedent of having those items already produced, they were able to negotiate the rights to keep doing that for the comic books. And so it made a very interesting setup in the fact that we had split rights for the property, right? So AMC controlled the television, all the rights for the video portion, right? So any character that appears on the show that's new could only appear on their stuff, couldn't appear on the comics. Anything that appeared in the comics could appear on the show, but anything related to the comics outside was owned by the comics and could stay there. And so we'll get to kind of where that point goes in a second. But so because, Robert said, hey, Todd, I'd love to make some. Let's make some Walking Dead figures for the series. And so they go to production. They make the initial idea was to do two lines, right? You have the TV line, and then you have the comic line.
Yeah.
So you got two sets of figures, basically at the same time. So the idea was that you would get the TV show would come out, and then 6 months later you'd have a line for the comic book, and then a TV show line, then a comic book line, and they would just kind of alternate that way. It didn't end up happening that way, just because I think I want to take a guess from the Todd world. The economics of the situation just bore that fact that the TV show is like exponentially bigger than the comic book at that time in terms of
Right.
like if you're a Walmart or a Toys R Us, like you want the TV show, you don't want the comic book, even though the intention of Robert was
Right.
like, hey, we make this a whole package, they got to take both and it benefits everybody. I think the TMP was like, hey, this is the way to go. So but with being able to do the split license stuff, like we took advantage of a lot of situations where AMC was maybe too rigid or they were looking for different partners. And so we, in the early days, worked with a company called Telltale. I'm sure some people may have heard of it. They were interested in doing a video game. And so I think Cena Grace is actually the one who brought the deal in, or at least fielded the first calls from Telltale saying, let's do something. And so we built this video game and created this character Clementine. So all the stuff in the game is based on the comic book, not on the TV show. And because it was in the comic book world, we owned basically the Clementine was a comic book property, not to be used by AMC's TV show. So you had this separate little thing outside the comics, and because Clementine never appeared in the comic books, AMC couldn't use Clementine on the TV show at all. So very weird. You get into these weird little kind of like, I don't, it's not like fiefdoms, but like their own different universes and stuff. And so it really kind of gets really interesting how it works. But we got to do this video game, and that video game brought in so many new people to the comics as well, right? So you have the TV show bringing in just truckloads of people, and the video game's like, here's another truckload of people. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, they're like, oh, did Clementine she appear in the comic books? No, but then there's this character and this character. And so you get a lot of people who are familiar with her story looking for something to tie into, like, because we had Glenn in there and we had some other early characters. And so we could tie that stuff in there, which is really, really fun. And it brought a lot of new voices to the comic book fandom, which was super cool.
Yeah. It's interesting though that wasn't an inhibitor to new fans, right? Like, because there was no I mean, it's almost like there's the two universes that are almost going in parallel tracks, right? That they're alternate realities almost of the same story. It's interesting that did not inhibit your ability to convert new fans.
I mean, not at all. I think we saw a lot of people who were like, because they wanted to, you get the first season of The Walking Dead was just like, I think it was 8 episodes, really short. And then it took a while before the second one. So people were just like, hey, I want more of this. Can I get more of it? And you're like, hey, like, your first season is basically roughly the first trade of The Walking Dead, and then second season was where trade 2 goes. And so you're like, hey, if you want to know what's coming up in future seasons, you have an easy sell to be like, hey, get 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 and just go where it's going. And then, as you know, like once you start reading, a comic series or whatever, like, you kind of easily get hooked in, and it's hard to like get knocked off those train tracks, as you said. So, like at that point, we were also already on issue 100 when the second season of the book came out. So like, guess what? Like all this really cool stuff. Guess what? You're going to meet this guy Negan, who is going to do some bad stuff to a character that you love on the TV show right now, but that's going to happen in 6 or 7 years. So read along, follow on this train. And a lot of people did. And which was, I mean, dude, like I can't tell you, specifically numbers, but like in those early days in the 2012s, 2013, 2014 time when like Walking Dead's at its peak, right?
Yeah.
We were printing like 250,000 compendiums at a time. So we would do a new reprint. We would print 250,000 compendiums at a time. And we would do that multiple times a year. Like it was selling that fast. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. It was, I would talk to, Tyler Shaneland over at Image, and this is one of my favorite things I've ever heard. He's like, hey, I just want to let you guys know. And he called Sean Makowitz and myself and said, hey, I want to let you guys know, you own all of this certain paper type, because like each book has its own, like
Yeah.
your own point of paper and type of paper and coat.
Yeah. The weight of paper
Yeah.
and weight and style and treatment and all
Tyler
of that.
called and
Right.
said, "Hey, I wanted you to let you guys know that you guys currently own the entire world stock of this paper." At one point, and we were like, "Wait, what? Wait, what?" And he's like, "Yes, every sheet of paper in the world you guys own for your." And we were probably doing a couple, maybe we're doing like 2 or 3, compendium 1, 2, and 3 at that time. Like when compendium 3
Sure.
hit, like I will say this too. Robert is one of the most business savvy creators in the comics industry, knowing that, hey,
Sure.
like we talked about earlier, like the making sure the book always comes out on time, but then knowing that, hey, every 6 years here's a trade, every 12 was a hardcover, every 24 is a slipcase, every 48 is a compendium, having a different, price point, a different level for fans to come in, like, hey, I want to get the hard. Like, dude, there were conventions where people would come up and they would buy 10 hardcovers at a time. Like, I want all the hardcovers. And you're like, this is 30 pounds of books that you're handing them to. And like, you don't have bags. You like have to go in the back and get boxes. And they would like walk away and send you a Comic-Con with 10 hardcovers. Like,
so they're walking through the convention center with
like,
10 hardcovers.
I hope they're going downstairs to their car to dump it off. But like, it's kind of crazy that they're like, they would eat as much as they could. And Robert found a way to like give them every little bit that they could. And it's, seeing now that he's doing these little digests for Invincible, like, I mean, knowing that the manga readers, they love that digest size, and him jumping into that so quickly was like such a smart move. Like, yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Is that his secret sauce? Like, is there, if you're looking for Roberts in the world, is there something in particular like that what is the key indicator that you found somebody like that? Do you think?
I think people who can see a little bit beyond, right? I think we've, just beyond just like, hey, I'm just doing a comic. Like what's the next step? What's the next thing to tag into, the next thing that's down the line, and never stop, right? Like I look at guys, James Tynion, I mean, what he's doing with Tiny Anger right now, I'm so excited. And it's like, I get jealous because I'll talk to Jaslyn and Harley and Devin. And I'm like, God, those are like, I'm like, I want that energy like that. I'm like, that's the early Skybound days. You guys are doing all the things all the time. And you're all just going like, just an idea comes up and you spin off it and you go. So exciting. I love what
the juice, man, that just keeps you going. Oh,
yeah, dude,
I'm with you.
I love what Kyle Higgins is doing, like with his massive verse stuff that he's putting together. Like, I think it's really creative, and him like, hey, I'm gonna shoot a movie. I'm gonna get these voice actors, this animated bit for one of my issues. Like, just not stopping at what's conventionally thought is possible, and just like, heff it, I'm gonna do it. Like, I'm gonna put my money behind this thing. Like, that's so amazing. I love it. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Let's talk about so what is your, during those early years, do you have a title? Obviously you have a title.
Yeah, it started off, it was funny because like figuring out the title was a thing, because like I just showed up there like, well, what do you want to be called? I'm like, I don't know, because like editorial director was Cena Grace's title. And then I was just like, I honestly got like went on LinkedIn. I was like, what is a businessy thing? And then like business development seemed like a buzzwordy type thing. And so I was like, okay, cool. Director of business development. Great. That's it. Go. And so just kind of kept with that tagline. I think when I left the company, I was SVP of biz dev. Even though like there was like a couple different SVPs or VPs of biz dev in different parts, because the company had kind of split off into different parts. And so like my little world was still there, but I didn't handle like the game side or whatever. So I was SVP of biz dev, and it's a really cute thing to put on a LinkedIn profile if you use LinkedIn. Yeah. I don't know who does. Some people do. I guess. I don't know. I feel so outside of it. I had to make a resume like a month ago, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, why do I have to do this? And then a buddy was like, sent it to me. He put it into Chat GPT, copied his, basically he was like, this is the format of my resume. Put these things in here, and like it kicked it out. And I was like, well, it worked. So, I was like, that's weird. I hate it, but it's weird.
Yeah, I use LinkedIn because for me, I was like, I just can't hit all platforms. I just don't have the bandwidth for it. So what are the important ones? Because we do so much work with retailers, I'm still on Facebook mostly,
absolutely,
because that's where comics retailers are. And because we work with so many publishers and biz dev people, I go to LinkedIn because that's where they all are. It's just those two for me. I have a Blue Sky account, but
I don't do too much Blue Sky. Yeah. I mean, Instagram and Facebook primarily.
Yeah, it's very weird that those are still hanging on. Yeah. Anyway,
what are you gonna do?
All right. Well, speaking of retailers, so I know that you were really involved in that early on in like dealing with the comics retailers. What is that relationship like during that period? I mean, I was a comics retailer. I owned my own shop from 2000 to about 2010. So I was there for all of that. And I was an early adopter. Issue 1, I hand sold over 100 copies of issue 1 at cover price, which I still, I hope those people held on to them. And it was actually the first book I would give a money back guarantee on, and about about a third of the people would actually bring it back and go, "This is not for me." I'm like, what is wrong with you?
Like, sweet, I'm gonna go get that graded.
I know, exactly. But talk about your relationship with those retailers, because you said you came from an experience in retail. Like, how did that relationship change over time?
Yeah, I mean, so before back in the late 90s, I managed a record store, and it was one of my favorite times of my life. I love the retail experience. I love the store, the community thing that comes around that. So I understood, what that was. And then I had, whether it was Heidi Ho or Comics Inc., like 2 comic shops that were in the Santa Monica, Culver City area that I loved to attend and go to. So I really love shops. And so being able to work with a lot of retailers is great. It was also miserable at the same time. Just
why?
I think it was Bill Shanis who, when I first started at Skybound, we were at one Comic-Con and he was talking. He was just like, "Give me the lay of the land," as Bill does or whatever. And he said, "So I'm gonna tell you that this is all you need to know about comic book retailers. If you gave a comic book retailer a $20 bill, they'd complain that you give them a 10 and 2 5s." And I was like, got it. So you can give them something free, but it's still not going to be right. And, and shout out to Brian Hibbs, proved that correct multiple times over the
years. He is somebody who says, but have you thought about 5 ones? I'm just saying 5 ones in there.
Sorry, we gave you 200 free comic books, but you had to pay $12 shipping. I'm sorry you can't figure that one out, bud. I love Brian, by the way. I love Brian, but like there's constants in his world.
Yes,
he's one of them.
Yes. He will find a way to explain to you why what you did was so obviously dumb.
Yeah.
So obviously. Yes. Anyway.
We should have known better. Sorry, guys. We're trying to make things weird and fun, but whatever. I love. There's a very unique person that decides to sell comic books, to get into a business to sell comic books, right? You're kind of not right in the head a little bit. You love something so much that you're like, hey, I want to share this with people. And so those are my people. And I really enjoyed like dealing with everybody across the board and finding ways to kind of work better with them. And look, I came into such a privileged position because it's like I'm also like the guy working at the hottest comic book in the world. So it's like it's really hard to be like a bad guy at any point because everyone like loves what we do. Like everything, like you'd go to a Comics Pro show and you set up a round table like, hey guys, like got any notes? Like, nope, love what you're doing. And then it's like, cool, but give me something else. Like, give me something. I don't know, like
something to justify myself being here. I mean, seriously.
I love hanging out at the hotel in Portland, but like I need to like give me something to go home with because I know my CEO is gonna be like, hey, what'd you learn? I'm like, well, they love what we're doing. Well, like, that's not enough to go back on. But like comic retailers,
this expense report for they love what we're doing. This
is all we got. Sorry, I'm just gonna keep rolling this way, guys. No need to grow. No, but it's comic book retailers are people who have such a passion for this art form that we're in that they love. They want to share with everybody. For the most part, there are some people who are just like, I just want to get my books for cheap, and that's why I have a store or a collective or a co-op or whatever. But the guys who are out there like doing their best to do it, and you you just get, I don't know, it's infectious. I get really excited about trying to find ways to work with them and do cool stuff. And, you know, every little idea that they would come in, even if it was harebrained ideas or whatever that, I remember I still rag on them, like Dennis Barger one retailer roll your eyes, but he's like in the back shouting at the sun and just like, you need to do newsprint, people love newsprint, blah blah blah. And then like weirdly enough, like 10 years later, Robert does this GI Joe compendium, and it's on freaking newsprint, and it's the coolest thing ever, right? So like, so sometimes, like weird ideas that don't seem right at the time eventually turn out there. By the way, and if you haven't seen the new newsprint on those books, it is fantastic. It's the best looking newsprint paper. Like whatever printer has it, like kudos to you for finding the coolest thing in the world. But
I've tried to use newsprint a couple times, and every time I go to them and say we want to try newsprint, they always say it's more expensive, which makes no sense at all, because you would think it should be cheaper. It should be, because it's just rougher and harder.
I would assume it has to do with like whatever the printing process is probably why it's a little more. But it's cool stuff. And so like look, meeting these folks, being able to hang out with them is super cool thing, and helping them succeed in business, like finding ways like, hey, like, can we do a variant program? Can we do some stuff that gets more people in there? How can we get folks to, go to shops who have never been to a shop? Like, what are the little levers we can pull? And look, most of the time, like, we fought the same battle against situations that we have no control on, right? Like AMC is not gonna be like, hey, we're gonna put comic shop locator is not gonna be tagged at the back of an episode of The Walking Dead, right? Doesn't happen for big studios who do, Warner Brothers or Marvel. They don't put that at their stuff too. So like, those are the little fights that we'd always kind of jump in there, but like we would get wins from time to time. Like we would do, you cool little promotions where, like you'd get some people to show up at stores, and we'd try to come up with ideas and how can we do bigger stuff. And, we had a lot of really cool ideas that were, never went anywhere, but like we would talk to retailers about how we can do it. And I love that stuff, and getting, getting someone excited about comics is awesome. I love it. It's awesome. Like,
can you talk a bit about how, I will say that when I look at that organization, and I'm sure Robert has a big influence on this, but I also know none of these things are done without a team. So can you talk a little bit about some of the sort of surprise drops that you guys did while you were there? I mean, some of the biggest ones are obviously have happened since you've left, but you guys set a culture for that. And as somebody who understood the mechanics of what you did, I've always just been in awe of the fact that, you were able to pull some of those magic tricks off, because it is no small feat to surprise people in this industry.
I mean,
right?
Kudos to Sean Makowitz, who's the publisher, SVP of publishing at Skybound, and his team, like Andres, who's the head of graphic design over there, and all the rest of the team, to be able to kind of like roll with Robert's, crazy ideas, right? I think one of the first ones we jumped out, Robert's like, hey, I want to go bi-weekly, for Walking Dead. Like, how do we do this? You're like, wait, what? We're going to do a 6-month stretch where every 2 weeks we've got a new Walking Dead. You're like, that's a pretty big swing to go, right? Or then he's like, hey, I'm going to create this entire book and I'm going to send it out to comic shops on one random day. That was like the die thing, where it's like, no one knows. We're just going to send it out and here you go. And you're like, wait, what? Like, here's a whole first issue of a comic book, like, for free based off your orders from another issue, like, that you just get. Like, that's bananas. That's the one that Hibbs was really upset about. Because he's like, I don't want to pay the fees. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, dude, come on, dude. You got free books. He's like, I got to figure out how to sell these. I don't know. And look, Brian's like things are, it's like not true. It's like, dude, like, I think you do better with a well-informed, sales force, as comic retailers, knowing like the FOC and the initial order process works for a reason, because it does. Like, say, this is a book coming out in 3 months. It's really cool. You should order it. And you order it, not knowing about a thing. It's like, it's hard because you don't have the time to prep. And it's like, oh, just here's a cool thing from Robert Kirkman. I'm going to try to hand sell this without any knowledge until the day it shows up. So sometimes like the surprise in the industry does not necessarily work. And you saw something similar with the Void Rivals, right? So, that whole thing was, I was lucky enough to kind of like towards the end of my time at Skybound, I was involved with what they were doing. He's like, I'm gonna do this stealth book, and no one's gonna know it's a Transformers book. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Like, Transformers, it's so big, shout it from the rooftops. He's like, no, I want to do a surprise. And it's like Robert, and this goes back to Robert just being a fan of going into a comic shop back in the day, not knowing what's going to be there. Because as fans, you didn't know. You just go in like, oh, cool, I got my X-Men issue. Oh, something crazy happens. That's awesome. Like you just rolled with it, and he wants that experience there, even though he understands too that like times have changed. Like every information's everywhere at your fingertips all the time. And so you need to know, you want to know, and you're going to know stuff's going to get leaked, right? And in The Walking Dead in one way, right? Like, hey, guess what? Like, not tell anybody. He got me on that one too. He didn't tell me until I think 2 weeks before, where he said, hey, I want you to read the proof. And I'm like, all right, cool. And I read it and I was like, at the end, I was like, that's weird. And I had to text him. I'm like, because he asked me, he's like, hey, did you read this yet? I'm like, I'll read it tonight. He's like, okay. And so I read it and I was like, hey, hey, man, that's a cool ending. If that was the end, that's a really cool ending. He's like, it is. And I was like, what? Like, wait, what? And that's him. He just doesn't let you know. And I was like, I've been in your company for 10 years at this point, and you didn't think you could tell me that you're going to end The Walking Dead? And you're just like, I'm going to supreme on people like crazy, dude. But the Void Rivals thing was so interesting because he also had to get this multi-billion-dollar toy and entertainment company on board with not announcing that you're doing their books. Like, how do you, like, the guy can sell a book, man. So, and so like, but to the point too, we also realized like, hey, like we should probably let some retailers know that this is going to happen. And so we had, they set up a retailer call, which has turned out to be this really cool thing that they're doing with most releases now, because they have these new retailer calls. And shout out to the team at Lunar for helping put these things together, and Arun, who's really kind of like picked the ball up with these now. But they do these retailer calls where they bring you in, and then with the Void Rivals, like they had 150 retailers on the call, and he's like, guys, I want to let you know, like, this new series, it's a new space opera, blah blah blah, and it's also a shared universe, and blah blah blah. And then he's like, guess what? There's a Transformer, and you're like, everyone on that call, like their faces went, wait, what? I mean, you couldn't see the faces. I know what their faces did. They were all shocked. Although you could see Ed Greenberg's face because he just kept his camera on the entire time. So you can see Ed on there, but like everyone was like, holy smokes. Like the chat was crazy. They're like, there's no way. And so then he shows Jetfire and like lets everyone in on what this is and how big it's going to be. And that was really cool. And that they had this, I don't know, they said a hashtag, but it was basically this is our thing. It's called Keep the Secret. And so the retailers on this call, and Robert has done this for all the years that we did like our retailer breakfast in San Diego or New York. Like he let stuff out to retailers knowing like, hey, like I trust you, you trust me. I'm going to share with you some stuff that if it gets out could really kind of harm what we're trying to do in the larger scheme. Like he would sell them some pretty big things.
Yeah,
but it rarely ever leaked.
I've been to.
I think there was 1 year that there was
one or two. I think definitely one of those breakfasts. Yeah. But yeah, there was definitely here's what the year looks like. Please
tell you really cool stuff that's coming up. And then, and for the Void Rivals, like he said, just keep the secret. And people did, and they didn't, no one really knew. And I was shocked. Like I was every morning, I'm just, because I'm also, I did a variant for the book. I was excited. And every morning I'm looking, I'm like, has anyone leaked it yet? Is it no leak? And I was like, this is crazy. And then when it, like, I think the day before, I think Rich probably had someone from Diamond UK snapped a photo of an interior book and sent it off to him or whatever. But you got to see like, oh shoot, like this is out there. And then but people also don't consume Bleeding Cool daily, like some of us idiots.
Yeah.
Just pumping in my veins, Rich. But like, so people were I would hit people up and they're like, dude, did you know? I'm like, of course I knew because it's a thing, but like they would still go to the shop and see it. And they were like, oh my God, this is crazy. And I'd have friends who, like my buddy JJ in Sioux Falls, he goes to Rainbow cards and comics out there. And he's like, yeah, dude, I'm like standing there telling a person in the store, this is a Transformer book. And they're like, what? And no idea. And so those surprises and being able to pull that off is pretty amazing. And they've done it time and time again with the stuff that they're doing with the Energon universe, and it's so impressive for them to be able to keep the secret. I mean, it is a true thing, even internally, for them not to blab and tell people, like, because you get excited as a fan. Like, this is really cool, exciting things, and I want people to know, like, as much as I do. And so I tell my dogs, and they're like, we don't care about Transformers, Dad. We just want, give me a bone. And I'm like, okay, fine, you get a milk bone, it's fine. But it's so cool that he can do that and continues to do that. And I think that, we've seen the stuff like, I think, Kyle Higgins did some really cool stuff with, with Radiant Black, and didn't tell people, he did the 2 different timeline stuff. And it was like, I'm like, this is so cool. Like, I'm so stoked that you guys are trying to do these things and kind of getting weird out there. And, it's really, really fun, to be able to kind of keep secrets and make the process of going to the comic shop exciting,
That's it, right? It is about making that exciting. And I will say that it always, as somebody who understands the mechanics of how these things get pulled off, it always seemed to me like it came from a place of not only just being a fan of the books and being a fan of the experience in the stores, but also a fan of the process, right? Because you cannot pull something like that off unless you're just really hyper vigilant about the details.
Absolutely. And when you're working with something this big too, you got to realize, like, it is, how many months in advance, we're a year in advance. Like, you're working on getting the license, or what's our pitch for the overall thing you want to do, as you pitch it to Hasbro to get them to sign on. Like, hey, this is this weird idea, but I want to do this book that doesn't tell anybody it is. And it's not a Transformer thing. And you only see a Transformer on like page 11 of the first issue. And we don't see a Transformer in the next like 6 issues, but we're going to have other little weird, like, here's Skuxoid, and here's these other like tertiary characters from the TV show. And you're like, wait, this is how we're launching the Transformers universe. And then, but Robert knows, like, hey man, like, we're going to lay this roadmap, and we're going to get people geeked up for it, so that when Transformers #1 comes out months later, I think it came out in October, and you're like, oh crap, this is big, and this is exciting. And then what are we going to do? We're going to launch G.I. Joe? No, we're not going to launch G.I. Joe. We're going to release a little mini series on Duke. We're going to expand the world a little bit. Here's the Cobra Commander, expand the world a little bit. Here's Destro and Scarlet, expand the world a little bit bigger. Where's Snake Eyes? Not an issue #1 of G.I. Joe. Who knows when he's going to show up, guys? Like, we want to keep these little exciting things for you down the line, because you can't give it all. You can't have all 300 plus characters in the first issue. Like, they've done an amazing job of building this world. And then you get like characters like Matt Tracker shows up in Energon universe. Like, so you have a character from Mask, which is another beloved toy franchise, that we're going to put this character into the comic, and like, on the free comic book day issue of all things, it's like, guess what? We're not even charging you. We're giving it to you for free. And we're giving you this super cool character. Like, what? Like, I geek out so hard at these little things. And it's like, I want so much more of it. And I want it to succeed. And it's like, keep chugging along, guys. Let's go. And the magic is, and Adam, like, having been on the inside, like, putting this stuff together is not it behind the scenes. There's so many levers, so many mechanisms, so many like editorial fighting over ideas and arguing and like getting logos approved and all these little things. And then you're dealing with the licensor, and you're like, oh, well, we want to do this, but that doesn't fit with the character. And like, there's so much stuff to balance. It is like, you think it's like, it's almost impossible at times to put these things out. And yet, there you go.
It's a miracle that any of them get done. And it's also a miracle that you can keep that energy despite all of that. Right? Because so you and I have seen so many people behind the scenes who just lose it. There's no fan drop in them anymore. They're just in it because they know how all the shit works. And, and it's just harder to hire for
Absolutely.
That. So it's amazing to see that energy still maintained throughout. And I think that it's a testament to what you guys built, that honestly, that you were able to, like, we've seen Transformers, and we've seen G.I. Joe, we've seen licensed books over and over again from different companies, and the fact that people care so much about the Energon universe is just a testament to that rollout, right? To that very careful sort of release. I think it's beautiful.
We're at this weird time right now too, where we are and it's, I'm sure it's a larger global political world type situation where like, hey, I want to go to the back to the thing from 40 years ago that made me feel really warm inside. So all these
Yeah.
nostalgia license plays of these like 80s and 70s cartoons and stuff are really big right now. It's because we're like we need a little comfort zone, and that's when we felt good when we were 8 years old, sitting in front of the TV at 6 in the morning before school, watching GI Joe and Transformers and stuff. So I get
Yeah.
where we're at in that world. I will say this: it was a bit of a warning to the rest of us out there. Like, yeah, it's too much, guys. Like, we've got too much of this stuff out there right now, and it's kind of like
Yeah.
I do feel it's thinning. At the wider we go, it's like I don't know if we need a Battletoads book, and not to pick one thing specifically, but I'm just like I'm like,
Sure.
do we? Like, I don't know, but also it is also a hard part too because new readers aren't coming in as easily as they were before. So we're feeding to the inmates who are already in the asylum. And I want to kind of keep supporting new stuff, right?
Right.
And that's why I think the Energon stuff feels new and is enjoyable because it's kind of a new take on the whole thing where it's all merged into one thing that we're doing. Like there's a lot of stuff I picked up issues and I'm like, I don't really care about this, like this other take of another licensed property or whatever. Like, so I'm, like, give me something, give me another Exquisite Corpses, like this is a really cool take, give me,
What a smart book
I
that is.
mean,
That's just
those
like,
guys, James, I'm telling you,
come
dude,
on.
James is, yeah, I get really jealous. I'm like, I wish I was working with you guys. But then again, I don't.
No, because I also know that I like getting some sleep, and I know what that energy feels
Oh
like,
my
man. That
gosh.
juice will keep
Yeah,
you at your
seriously.
desk and have you
I
sleep
mean,
under it. You know what I mean?
shout out to that team for doing the Exquisite Corpses world tour, but like, bro, that's a
Oh,
lot of work, man. It's a lot of
ooh,
work goes into that stuff.
oh, yeah. All right. Um, let's switch gears up a little bit. Tell me about Comics Vault Live. How does that become a thing? And obviously that has been a big defining moment for you,
I mean, everything starts and stops with the pandemic, right?
right?
We were, you know, trying to figure out something to do at that time, and Skybound has always been a really cool place. The fact that like we look for, we did so much different stuff. And we weren't just a publisher, right? We're a production company, we're entertainment company, we're a multimedia company, we're making video games, we're doing short form video, we're working on pitching stuff for film and TV, and then we're also doing consumer products, right? And so I oversaw a lot of the consumer product department, and then kind of in the pandemic my role changed, and then we brought in a woman named Garima Sharma, who's fantastic. She had a ton of experience working in consumer products, and she came in and took over that space. And so I was kind of like floating around trying to figure out like what did I really want to do. And like we're also we're sitting at home like everyone else, and so we had this really unique experience with doing stuff to our consumers and finding ways to kind of like we did we did we call it the expo. And so we built this idea for this you know it, there was the Image Expo back in the day, and so we decided to kind of take that and we'll do the Skybound Expo. And so we were doing these like little mini conventions for all of our stuff. And kind of at the same time, I was like, I want to get a way to serve the comic fan at home who's like, hey man, like I want to connect with you, I want to buy some variants and do some stuff because we're not putting them in the stores, we're not going to conventions. So came with the idea to do this thing
Right.
called Comics Fall Live. And so it was me really just going into like our warehouse and like digging up books and like that we've got comp copies and stuff that are just sitting there like, hey, can I get some books? We'll get them graded, we'll sell them to you guys. And then just kind of like use that as a bit of a launching point to kind of have a bigger conversation with our fans directly. And that we would do it once a month, do a bigger show where we'd bring out like, all right, cool, here's a new variant that we just did for the show. Or I think we did a variant for, I think our first outside Skybound variant was Radiant Black #1. We did a Tyler Kirkham variant, and that was really cool to kind of support other creators with our program. And just
Right.
me trying to be like any of the other retailers out there trying to do cool stuff. And it turned out to be it was a really fun program. I think we did it for about 2 years. Was also able to be the first person to ever sell a comic book on the Whatnot platform, which was like at the time was
Wow.
they were just selling like Pokemon and some trading cards and stuff. And so we sold the first comic book, and then shortly after that, like they started taking off, and we did like a cool program with them. And so CVL was on there. We were doing a show once a week, and which is super fun. And then eventually, like when I left the company, I was like, all right, CVL stayed there, but I was like, I need to keep doing this just because like I enjoy the live selling, platform and doing that stuff. And so I I was able to, I did stuff on Whatnot, and then eventually eBay Live came around that summer of 2022. And then from that point, I got hooked up with them through Jesse James Comics and Ollie from ANZ Comics and Skybound. Like we all kind of worked on a bunch of stuff together. And then I've been working with eBay Live pretty much exclusively since then. I contract with them as a consultant for the comic space. I help out with the eBay Live team, and then I sell on the platform pretty much like at least weekly at this point. So
There's so much you just said I'd love to dig into. Let's no, it's
a lot.
But no, seriously, we could do another 2 hours just on what you just said. I think that a few things that jump out at me are one of the biggest shifts we saw during COVID was the like bigger companies getting an opportunity to go direct to consumer, like understanding that direct to consumer path. Because for so many of them, it was they would do an activation at a convention, and then that was it. Like that was their direct to consumer path. And as a result of the pandemic, having to set that up, suddenly you need direct to consumer, no matter what size company you are. Like you need that direct access, even if you're trying to sell at wholesale, right? Even if you're trying to sell to the retailers, like you need to be able to communicate to your fans, go buy this at the stores. So I would love to talk but you, once again, you and your team were so far ahead of the curve by noticing this and building on it. Obviously this comes out of what the hell are we going to do with our days kind of moment. Right. But you could have gone different directions, but you went direct to consumer. And I think that's a testament to being able to see around corners, like you talked about earlier. Where is there like a defining moment where this is like, oh, this is real. This is not just something we're doing during the pandemic. This is something that this is like, this is going to be a part of our company from now on.
Yeah. I think, I mean, you made a good point about not being able to be in person and talk to people. And that was one of my favorite parts about being, doing stuff with Skybound, pre-pandemic, was like going to conventions, talking to folks, like hand selling books and doing this whole thing. And there was that point where it's like, I kind of miss it for myself. I was like, I want to be able to talk to these guys, not just on Twitter or whatever, but like, how can I get them something that we can share, and being able to sell them, cool stuff that, we made some really fun variants and stuff. We weren't just trying to like have me just like get them stuff. I was like, I want to make stuff because I'm a fan of variants. I like different cool covers and stuff. And so I want to make stuff that was fun. And also kind of like share what we're doing in advance, right? Like these are things that we're going to see. Like we did a lot of Invincible stuff, but knowing that, hey guys, like I knew Invincible was in the works, it was happening, and then the popularity just took off when that first season came out, and was really like, how can we kind of give you guys a heads up of what's coming on, right? And it was, there wasn't, I'd say probably the biggest piece of when we said, oh, this is really a thing, was when we did the Invincible variants with Whatnot, and that was in 2020. I think it was 2021 actually, the first one. So Tyler Kirkham, like I was working with Jack DeMaio over at Whatnot, and we're like, hey, what can we do? And so Arun and myself were like, let's get a guy, let's do a cool variant, and we can just put up there for sale. And Tyler's a buddy that no relation, by the way, Tyler Kirkham and Shawn Kirkham. Even though I would get his discount at any comic shop I could. But was like, I would love to do Tyler. He had done his final boss, his Kickstarter, and so he had like this kind of pose that he had kind of like, he was a battle damage or whatever. Like, dude, let's do something like that where it's like Invincible just beat up. And so we did these comic covers, and the first one was just like, people were just like, this is the most insane thing ever. And so like we launched it on their app. And a really cool thing too was like we shared it with other sellers. So like Whatnot gave us a truck to sell, and then we were the launch partner, but then they gave books to other sellers on their stream who could use that to kind of build their audience and stuff. And that was really like, I mean, truthfully, that was the thing. Like that variant, I think, is what really put Whatnot on the map in terms of the comic space. And and then it's so far enough that we did like an Omni-Man version, and then we did an Adam E version, And then I think they signed why not sign like Tyler to an exclusive deal that like you can only do battle damage stuff with us for a while. And it was like they were like, here's the Batman one, here's the boys, here's all these different ones, like here's a Kirby. And I'm like, why do you need a Kirby battle damage? Like that dude just blows bubbles. I don't understand. But they did everything they could. And like that was really like the big point. And then now that we see that Whatnot's there, TikTok's getting in their thing, eBay Live, like there's Remark, there's all these other apps that are getting into live selling space. It's such a big piece, and I think a lot of that does not happen if the COVID pandemic stay at home thing didn't happen. Like that was the thing. Like the industry had to find a place to kind of go and take this stuff, and we just went and joined that path.
So let's talk about nomenclature. Do you call it live selling? Do you call it stream? How do you
I think I say like 17 different things. I guess like live selling. Yeah. I mean, kind of like it's a weird. You just made my brain go bananas. I would say like live selling makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
It's
what was,
I mean, I guess
what were some of the others that came to you?
I mean, it is like live streaming. I don't know. Yeah, live selling is the best word. That's the best word. Yeah, live selling. Even though you're still in person at a shop, live selling, you're hand selling stuff. Like it's a weird thing to like. This is not just stream selling. I don't know. It's a great question. You broke me on this one, Dan. Damn it, dude.
I knew I was gonna find it eventually. I will tell you, Jack DeMaio is on the upcoming list where we're actually going to be interviewing him soon, because this is a huge piece of the business. In fact, one of our clients is Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's been a huge proponent of this and has essentially launched VFriends on live selling. That's where they've done all of this business. So who do you think, I mean, obviously you say you're working with eBay Live as a consultant. I am assuming that means you're working with other retailers and publishers. Who is this for? Who, from a business standpoint, who is the live selling for?
Damn it, should be for everybody. Honestly, I think at some point in the next, couple years, it'll really kind of, you'll find a way to do it. I don't understand where, there are two worlds out there, right? Or the retailer, hey, I just want you just come to my shop. I want to sell just to my people here. And then there's a person like, hey, I want to be able to sell to everybody, right? And people do it both sides, right? There are people who are staunch proponents of like, I will only sell in my shop. I don't want anyone else to know about it. This is my little space, and I just want to serve my little community. And then there's like the people who are like, hey, I want to reach as many people as possible. I want to touch a person out here because they might not be interested in buying the book that I have, right? So maybe they've got, around, like maybe there's an old copy of Daredevil that you're like, no one in my town, it's been on my shelf or whatever, no one to buy it. eBay has been there for 25 plus years at this point, right? So everyone, I would assume most shops, I would say probably 98% of the comic shops have an eBay component of their store, or they have a web store component as well. But this is another way to do those sales. It is still very early in its life cycle. It's I get into discussions with other retailers. They're like, oh, why would I sell on live? Because, a book is going to sell, maybe a book might sell for 30% less than I have it on my store or on the eBay shop, or even less. I've sold things that are like half price. I'm like, dude, like you got a great deal. Like, just so you know, like great deal. But who was I talking to? Man, I was talking to somebody at C2E2 about this. And it's like, when you're in a room and people get really hung up on numbers, right? So you've been doing this podcast for so long, right? And you look at your numbers and you see your analytics and you see how many people it reaches or whatever. And you're like,
sure,
man, I'm not hitting those PewDiePie numbers. I don't have 7 billion people following me or whatever. And you're like, oh man, this sucks. But it's like, dude, like if you were in a room, if you were at a convention center in a panel room with 200 people listening to you talk, you got a pretty packed panel, right? That's a pretty decent sized room, and it's packed, right?
That's a big deal. 200 people.
If you had a comic shop and you had 35 people in your comic shop at one point, dude, that's probably one of your best days of your week. You have you don't have 30 people in a room at once. So like, I look at the ability to be like, I'm in a room, I'm talking to, whether I got 15 people in the room or I got 2,000 people in the room, I'm talking to you guys about these comic books. I'm selling you these things, giving you the opportunity to buy something really cool and giving you a chance to get it at a price. Like I like to do my auctions. I like to start books at $1. I want to make their little play time, like hey, start at $1, man. Like we'll see where we go.
Yeah.
It's fun, and I take hits on books all the time, but I'm also able to sell $100 in 2 hours, right? Like I can move a lot of products in a short amount of time. Packing sucks. I'll admit that it's the worst part of the whole thing. But and it's just me here. I don't have any. I'm not lucky enough to have a helper to pack my books. But like you're able to move a ton of stuff in a short amount of time, and it's a really cool way to do it, man. Because I don't have a store. I'm just here. I've got, like I got short boxes on the other side of the camera. Like you can just stacked of stuff. And it's comps that I've had for years or books I picked up recently in collections and stuff. And like, I want to find a way to sell the stuff that I don't need. And it works out really well. And I also like the fact that like, I can also drop news to these guys too. And I like to treat my shows not just as a sales platform. Like I've been very lucky enough to have some amazing guests come on, and I've been able to kind of like do interviews, and like San Diego Comic-Con was this past weekend. I did 3 shows at the eBay live stage and one afterwards. Right. So my 4 shows were Thursday morning. I did a stream with Jeff Staple, who's a big designer based on New York. His brand is known for the pigeon. So Jeff and I, like, we talked about his comic collection. He had a bunch of his own personal books graded by PSA. We auctioned off like shoes and comic book combos. Like it was a really cool experience, right? Then that same night, I did a charity stream with the guys from Cover Price, and we raised like almost like $3,000 for comic books for kids. And then the next day, I did a pack opening stream with the guys who were launching the new Invincible trading cards, which was like a really cool experience. And then I did a stream with Roberto Ramos and like on midday Saturday, and we're talking about his new Fantastic Four book and why he likes to draw the Thing. Like that's awesome, right? And not just me like, hey man, here's a new Spider-Man book, here's a new Walking Dead Deluxe, here's a new this. Like I'm not like I like to make my shows a little bit more of an entertainment. And I think that there's a cool bridge that's going to happen where you can kind of take those two. And it's been compared to QVC back in the day, but I think it's a little different, right? Because like I think where our world is a little, it's like I'm not Don West up there going, hey man, if you buy these baseball cards, you're gonna be able to date any girl out there you want. You just walk into any girl at a bar because you bought these junk wax baseball cards for $39.99 and you're the talk of the town. Like, no man, like I'm giving you a walk-in at number 1, 9.4. We're gonna start an auction at $1, and this is your chance to get this. And like that's cool stuff, man. I think it's really fun. And I think the guys, the collectors and stuff who pop into my stream, like they know they're looking for a little something extra than just like me slinging books the entire couple hours. Like we're going to talk about stuff. We're going to talk about the movies. And we're going to talk about, what's going on in my life. Everyone knows the name of my dogs. They know Mox and Mama because I talk about them all the time. So, those little things, it's the extension of what we were doing with Comics Fall Live in the pandemic, of just being like, hey, how can we bridge this gap? Right. Sell you guys stuff, but also kind of keep you entertained with our stuff. And this is the logical, next steps. And I do think honestly within the next, things are cranking now, but like in the next like few years, like, as long as the economy doesn't collapse and we're not all run over by our AI overlords, like we're still able to kind of buy cool stuff with the money that we have. Like it's, it's going to be a part of our community. And,
so long as
there isn't a nuclear war
right now.
All this stuff. But like it was really fun to be able to go to Comic-Con this year, and I have guys that are like, hey man, I love watching you on eBay Live, or I remember Comics Fall Live. Like guys were like, there was one guy who had a CVL shirt. I only made one CVL shirt. We sold like 40 shirts, but like one of the dudes there had it, and I was like, that's really cool. So it's fun to connect with folks that way.
Yeah. I will tell you, it has been a really interesting, because I go to so many comics retailer or industry events, and it's since I started this podcast, it's been fascinating to be the person that people have that parasocial relationship with. It's like there's like they're continuing a conversation they've been having with you that you didn't know.
Absolutely.
It's such an odd experience. I don't dislike it. It's just it's a really unique.
Yeah.
I was not expecting it. Um, who do you watch? I mean, is there anybody you watch for inspiration? Like, is there? I mean, are you a consumer of the medium as well?
I mean, I do watch some, but not for inspiration. Like in my brain, I know where I'm at. Like I'll pop in streams and whatever just to see what other guys are doing, whatever. But not in any way of like
Yeah,
I'm trying to steal what they're doing. Like I look to,
sure.
I watch like the stuff I do watch is other content. It's like I'll watch wrestling content and Magic the Gathering content. Like that's like the stuff that I'll keep on the background versus or other comic podcasts or whatever. For my shows, I just go in there and be myself. Like I did work as a DJ at a rock radio station in the late '90s, and so I did overnights, and so
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable. This
I was told to ask you about that, by the way. I totally forgot. That's
oh
what I
my
was going
god,
to open with.
yeah,
Can we get your DJ voice? Do you
I
have?
do. I mean, it has kind of merged into what my voice is now, but it was a little more exasperated. Like I'd be like, "Hey guys, Real Rock 95 KHOP, Modesto, Stockton, Oakdale, you're home for Real Rock." Like that type of stuff. So like when I'm on there, like I kind of channel that stuff and I try to like, I know I've done it. So I know where I am and what I do. So I kind of just roll with like that. I just go in there. I'm going to say stuff. I flub up words and phrases all the time. Robert used to make fun of me all the time because I would say some sort of like, you know, get him by the knickers. And he's like, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't know. I just said it. I just say weird stuff. And like, I honestly, I butcher words, phrases.
Because you don't want to get stuck. You just have to like keep.
You just got to keep going,
If
and whatever it is, you just kind of roll with it. And like and it's honestly, I've been on a podcast for the past year and a half with the guys from Beyond Wednesdays, so Brian McClay and Big Leg and Red Hood and Yee, and those guys, and it's been really fun to do that. And I honestly, when I go in there, like I screw up stuff all the time. I sound like a big doofus, and I don't care. I am a big doofus. That's it, and I'll go on here and I'll keep doing this because it's fun. And, I get to use my experiences and my connections in the world of comics and stuff and bringing guys like, we had Jim Lee on a couple weeks ago. Robert's come on and done a podcast with me, and I call it podcast too, which is kind of weird, but like it's a live stream, but I want to make it more than just me shilling books to you. I want to like you to feel entertained and stuff. So, yeah.
So when you podcast it, do you remove the sales part? Is it really just
no? It's all
what
do they call it? Consumertainment or whatever. So it's all like so I'm selling like a book, and like I'll have Jim Lee here. I'm like, hey man, like Jim, like would you sign this? Wildcats #1. Put it out there, like let's talk about why Grifter is my favorite character, and like tell me about like what that process was, and like we'll go into it as we're selling the book. And one of the cool things too is like it does give you a little more when you do that type of stuff. It's not just like I'm not just selling a book, I'm selling something that's like a piece of me too. Like you get to see like a customer's like, hey, like, oh, that's cool, man. Like Clutch said he'll really like this part of the story. I really like that story too. Maybe it gets a person to bid an extra buck on there, or they really want to get that piece or whatever. Or if something comes from my personal collection, they feel like a little, like you said, that parasocial relationship, you feel like you're connected to me because it came from my collection. This is something that I've had since I was a kid, and I just like decided I'd sell it now, like those little things are kind of interesting.
Give us an idea of the scope. I mean, the size of your operation now. Like how many, do you have like some sort of feeling for how many consumers you work with or sell to? Like how
it changes all the time. So like, I'll use eBay as an example for what we do. So like eBay has different levers that they can pull to when you do your streams, right? So if I go on right now, I'll have, 25 to 35 people in my room constantly. If I just go on, eBay has a lever where they can do a push notification and send it out to other comic buyers. And so they go, oh, cool. Like, hey, by the way, Big Clutch is on right now. Go check them out. You just get a little ping in your phone and say, go check it out. And so at those points you can get, I can get another 1,000 people come through, and whoever stays around, like if I can hold the room with like 60 to 75 people, that's a really good room. But then I can do a show with Jim Lee and they're like, hey, we're going to broadcast this to a bunch of people. And so I'll have like 3,000 or 4,000 people come through the room, and I could hold maybe like 600 people in the room for the period of time. And it's amazing.
Wow.
That's a big group of folks in there. PCB Hobby, Todd and those guys did a stream at San Diego this weekend with Sajjad Shah and Big Kern was on there hosting. And they had like 10,000 people come through their room for that hour or the 2 hours they're on there. And it's like, And then those are people who may have come in there and left, but like
laughed.
that's a unique people who've come in there, and that's like being able to see 10,000 people come through your room for a little bit, and maybe they're not interested in buying that Fantastic Four book you got on the screen that they're going to bounce out, but like they came in to see what's going on, and you want to, with me, like that's why I want to have a little more entertainment. I want to be able to like them to pop on and say, hey, this guy's kind of funny, or he said something kind of cool, or he's got a cool guest. I'm going to stick around here for a little bit longer, right? And so then, as you know, like when you look at metrics, you're like, oh, cool. I saw like my viewer retention was a little bit higher this time. So okay, cool. Like I know that like people saw something that they did and they stuck around. So I'm not a big data guy. I mean, I'm getting there because I just launched a YouTube channel with some stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, like I got 38 followers. This is amazing. I'm like, you get like a little pump, like, okay, when do they drop off? They stop 5 minutes and 51 seconds, and when they dip, I'm like, well, I did a 13-minute video, so they saw less than half, and you're like, those little things are like, what the fudge? It's so fascinating and also completely frustrating too, and that's kind of why in my head I'm like, just keep doing what I do the way I do it, and whoever comes to see it, that's great. And if they like it or not, I don't care. I'm just doing my thing.
We do a live show, but Brian Garside of Managed Comics and I do a live show every Tuesday. And by the way, we'd love to have you on
for sure.
Because officially extending that, we should do that.
It'll take another 6 months like this one did.
Yeah, exactly. We got so close a couple times. He and I, like, we both came into it with ideas of what this show's going to be, and like we had rundowns, and we had all this thing planned, and then after a while, it just became like, no, the show is Brian and Adam, and whoever else we can bring in to have conversations with, and so like we should just lean into the fact that nobody else can do this show because it is us, right? I think that was a big light bulb moment for me because I wanted to like set standards, I wanted to like make it better, but it is as good as it's going to get because it is us, and we bring what we bring to it.
We know our limitations of where we can go with this or not. Like
exactly.
Like, hey, I'm not going to bring in a production team and a producer and scriptwriters to do all this stuff. Like I know what I've got. So
yeah, exactly. And I will say that just that moment, is that why eBay is a good choice for you, is because of the traffic?
It's both. I mean, when I was doing Whatnot too, like we had great viewers and stuff. Like eBay has turned out to just be kind of like my place. Like I can stream wherever I want to. I just like eBay. Sure. I like the folks who work there. I like to be in that ecosystem. Not saying I don't like Jack over at Whatnot. I love them. We're good buds, but it's just like I'm just there, and I've got users and viewers who go there knowing that I'm going to be there. So like, it's just kind of easy. Once you're in it, you're just in it. Like jumping around, it's like, oh, I haven't used Whatnot in 6 months. I got to relearn like what their tech is and how to do all this stuff. I'm like, oh, cool. When you're in the one ecosystem, it's just easier to just kind of stick with the one ecosystem.
I'd like to do another facet, and we hinted at this in the introduction. Your comic art fans gallery is pretty fucking spectacular.
Well, it hasn't been updated in a very long time, but yes.
You have access to a lot of artists. You got a few things. What are some of the highlights of your collection right now?
Oh man. I've got a couple pieces that I really, really cherish. I think it's so funny too, because like ones that like there's a piece, one of my favorite things is this Brett Booth piece that I got. Man, it was probably 6 years ago. I think it was pre-pandemic. I saw it pop up on eBay, and it was actually a comic shop who had come to one of our retailer breakfasts. Like, oh, we sold it to you, but it was a piece of Backlash and Zealot and like a Velociraptor that was from the Homage Studios art, like little sampler art book that they had put out in the early 90s or whatever. It's like early Wildstorm days. And it was like one of the first things I ever saw Brett Booth's art, I believe. It might have been before he did his the Backlash series for sure. And I just remembered like that was just a really cool piece. It's like these two characters fighting, there's a Velociraptor. Like, what is this? And it popped up and I was like, oh my God, I gotta own that. So like that was really awesome. It's a great little piece. I have a couple really cool, and I wish, look, I'll say this. I am a dummy and I should have bought way more art when I was younger. and I should have bought more Invincible art and Walking
yeah.
Dead art, because the Walking Dead art I bought and I kept, and I was like slumped a little bit, but Invincible art is going crazy right now, so I should have bought more. Sorry, Ryan, I should have bought more from you and not let you burn it. But it's a separate thing. But I've got
He burned it?
oh yeah, I never saw that video.
No.
Oh my god, this was like early days. Like there's a video of Ryan, and I think Derek Hunter makes a cameo in the back of it, but he's got this gigantic like Weber charcoal burner, and he's just like dumping pages and covers on and just setting them all on fire, because all his early Invincible stuff he hates his art from back then. He just really does not like it. And so this was oh god, maybe 2012, 2013, he just like burns like just a huge chunk of it. And that's big when he would like, he would sign it like Waya, because he didn't want to put Ryan. He was just like, he had his nickname was Waya.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like you could probably find the video online somewhere, but it's just like, you're like, what the fudge? And I think someone mentioned like,
hey Blake, if you get a second,
if you can find that clip,
drop it in there.
And I think someone mentioned they were like, yeah, if he had kept that art, it's probably like $250,000 worth of art now, which is crazy. So it's like, you're like, what? And I'll joke with Ryan about it from time to time when I see him. But I've got a really great Invincible.
Remember that time when you burned up a house in your barbecue?
Sorry, he's like, I honestly don't think he's remorseful. He's like, yeah, I hated that art. Like at the time, it just made sense. But shout out to Derek Hunter for the cameo in the video. It's really great. I've got a really cool, oh man, this is one of my favorite pieces too. J. Scott Campbell Michonne cover that he did for The Walking Dead. When we did the blind bags for the 15th anniversary, we got Campbell to do a Michonne, and I was like, Marilyn, I don't ask you for anything ever, but I would like to buy this art. And remarkably, it was a very reasonable, just a Campbell scale, reasonable price. But I was like, I need to own this, because I don't have any Campbell art myself, and something that kind of ties into what I was doing at the time. And it's such a very special piece to me. But I got the indie book discount, as they called it, because it wasn't a Marvel book title. So it was really nice to be able to get something at the Campbell discount, which is at this point it's a couple mortgage payments for me here in LA. So
kidding. I have no doubt.
I got a couple a really cool piece. I got a piece that Charlie gave me that is one of my favorite pieces. This pencil thing that he did of Negan and Rick from his All Out War sketchbook he did. I have a weird piece of one of the first comic covers I remember buying in like the late 80s, early 90s was Checkmate issue number like 31 or something like that, or 28. It's this weird, it's got two of the knights on the cover, and they're just like, it was just, to me as a kid, I'm like, that's a cool looking cover. I don't know who those guys are. And I was able to find that cover like 20 years ago on eBay, and I bought it, and it's like still one of my prized possessions. A lot of the stuff is like stuff that I like, like stuff not necessarily like, I'm gonna buy this because I know this is gonna be a $50,000 cover in a couple years. It's like, no, I really like that art, or it was given to me by somebody that was really special. So that type of stuff. But I'm not sitting on a Jock Batman cover that's gonna sell for $288,000 at any point soon. So.
Well, I'm sure it sounds like all of it together, you'll be fine.
I mean, unless we get another LA fire at some point, I gotta I told the wife, said, look, if you gotta bounce, get the animals, get your computers, and then grab these 4 things off the wall and this one bag over here, and then go. Like, that's it. Good Lord, get insurance, guys. Like, that is a big thing. Get insurance.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, I think back on when I was in LA, the collectors I know, and just thinking about, they lived in those areas, and I have no idea how much of that is gone.
It would be really fascinating for someone to put together a list of what we lost, because knowing, whether you're in the Palisades or in Altadena, there was a lot of comic creators in that space, and also big collectors. Absolutely. Like Jeremy Pawater, who is the owner of Jazzwares, like he lost 90% of his collection was wiped out, and I don't know if he posted a video where like he got a call from like, I don't think it was like the Chase Bank in the Palisades, where he had a safe deposit box, and they're like, hey, like we're back in here. It looks like things we may be safe. Do you want to come and take a look at your box? And so he actually had a first edition Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in his in his safety deposit box, and he was like, I don't know if it's here. I don't know if it melted, because it's paper and heat or whatever. Opens up and it was
Yeah.
in perfect condition. So he was like, oh
Oh,
my gosh, this is one of my
whoa.
most treasured pieces, and it was safe. So, but he lost so much stuff. I mean, his home was gone that fast, and and at that time, like, you didn't know, like, no one
Yeah.
knew at that time like how bad it was going to be. So people just like dipped, and they just like, all right, we'll be back in an hour or 2 hours. Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, has anybody checked in on Dave Mendel? Is he okay?
I
Is it,
think I don't know. Yeah, dude. Oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine.
if
Like
he
I feel
goes?
like he lives in the more industrial part of the city as opposed to the.
Yeah.
Although Dave, if you want me to invite me to your house, I'd love to check out your stuff at any point. Ab and I will come
Yeah.
over
I
and we'll
mean,
do a podcast from with you from there. So
absolutely. Absolutely. I, for a while was really friendly with Paul Dini. And so I got to hang out with Dave at Paul's house a few
that's
times.
awesome.
He's a sweetheart. I really like that guy. Let's talk about how when you stepped away from Skybound, like that
Yeah.
transition. Where does that come from? And like, what do those early days for you look like? Because that's a huge career
Oh yeah,
defining
dude. It was
moment for you.
crazy. It was one of those things where like, I just, like I'd been there for 12 years. My time at the company, I felt like, hey, like it had kind of been stagnating. The Skybound itself had become such a larger thing than it was in the early days, right? I really loved and
Right.
thrived the early startup days where you're just like figuring things out as you go. And the company became like, hey, like they got corporate backers, and they've got this whole structure now, and they're focusing on games and all that stuff. And so my spot was just like kind of like I was in a little bit of a floating little island on my own. And I was
Yeah.
doing the comics all live stuff or whatever, but it wasn't really taking to the point where like, hey, like makes a lot of like I'm not making a ton of money for the company, and I'm not doing the stuff that I'd really want to like I'd like to do, but like I'm not doing it to the point where like I can really do it to my full potential. And so, talked to our CEO, and I was like, hey man, I think it might be time to, we were like, hey, it might be time to go. And he's like, okay, well, like, what do you think? And so we worked out a deal, and I was able to leave on great terms, and to the point where, like, I still work with them. I still do variants with them. I do interviews and stuff. So we're still very friendly in that stuff, which is great. But those first little bit was really tough because you've been at a company for a long time. You put so much
Oh
of
yeah.
your life into building a thing, and
Yeah.
then it's not there. You're like, oh God, what am I gonna do? And so I feel those first few months, my wife was like, are you gonna be okay? And I said, just let me hang out with the dog, babe. Like, let me be in the backyard stressing and whatever. And, even though you're just sitting there not stressing, but you're also like stressing because you're not doing anything. And so it took me a little bit of
Yeah.
time. That first thing, thankfully that first Comic Con after that, which was, a couple months later, I was still working with them on a couple of their stuff they're doing. I got to kind of co-host their San Diego footage and stuff. They had a big interview space, and I did a couple interviews there. But that's when I got into the system with the folks at eBay Live. And so I got to work with Chelsea and Mayank, who were there at the time. And so Mayank has left to go work for Walmart, and Chelsea's still at eBay in a larger capacity. But that was my kind of like my catalyst to be able to work with them. And after being with them at the show, they were like, hey, would you want to do something for New York Comic Con and help us like plan that out? I said, sure. And so like that got me kind of like really quickly back into the groove of stuff. And so thankfully it wasn't too long that I was like off just sitting on my hands or whatever. I was able to kind of keep
Yeah.
going, and being able to console them has been great. And, it affords me the ability to kind of like also do my live shows with them and do that stuff, and kind of, work in the space of like finding artists that I want to work with and do a variant cover with them and delve into that space, which is bananas, by the way. But it's really fun and cool. And I get to kind of, that's my creative part is there. And then the business side is the consulting part. And, it's been good. It's going to keep me plugging along. And I was able to kind of like redid my garage. And so this new studio space is here. And like I said, it's all boxes and shipping material because I'm like trying to get all my Comic-Con stuff and pre-Comic-Con stuff backed up and shipped out. And,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's afforded me this nice ability to kind of like redefine what I'm doing. And it's good. Like I was able to do, Comic Con had so many great moments, and I'm really excited about what's coming up next, and being able to kind of take that next little step of what I'm doing and turn it into something bigger. So yeah, it's really good.
Well, I will. I don't want to push unless you really want to. I mean, unless you want to talk about those things, because it sounds to me like you're still ideating them.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the future. Like, where do you see the kind of like that live commerce,
Yeah.
variant culture, the collectibles, where do you see that heading in like the next, say, 5-10 years?
So interesting enough, so this past May, Battle Beast Invincible Universe Battle Beast #1 came out from Skybound. And so
Yeah.
having worked with those guys as well as I did, and also with the eBay side, I was like, hey, I got an idea. Like, how can we merge our two little platforms together to do something fun? And so Image or Skybound was already going to do those blind bags, and I said, hey, like, I want to do something that we had worked with sideways with at or kind of parallel with the guys at Whatnot on. They did these comic packs, and so making these, basically bringing the pack breaking world of cards to the comic space. And so I got to kind of build out this. I pitched a project, say, look, what if we do this? If we take the Invincible Battle Beast blind bags they're doing, we supplement it with a new variant from an artist that I really like, that's up and coming, and then we put another element, a little kind of chase element in there as well. And so we make these like 3 comic book packs that we can sell on live. We can crack them open. People, there's a hit element, signed books, sketch covers. And so we built this program, and I put it all together myself. It took so much effort to do as a one-man job, like bagging and boarding books, thousands of books
Sure.
myself, heat sealing stuff, getting the process of the bags made and doing all this stuff was a big undertaking. But it turned out to be a really cool thing that we shared across the eBay Live platform. And so with that, I was like, oh, cool. Like, this is a cool way that I'm taking my past experience at like Skybound of like the consumer product side of like making the thing, and then also doing the editorial stuff I love that I never really got to do at Skybound, except for with the CBL of like getting variants, and then putting this whole thing together to make a package. And so that's kind of something it's like a project I'm working on. So I'm like working on our second project now, that'll come out in October. And so really excited how that's coming together. And then of course, as I'm doing that one project, like there's 2 other little things coming together around that are very similar at the same time. I'm like, this is crazy. But then also the thing I mentioned earlier with Jeff Staple. So finding a way to do something with that too. So Jeff is, he's a guy who's outside of the comic space, though he is heavily influenced by comics. And so him being a designer and stuff, like he takes a lot of influence from the early days of like understanding of like, this is how you make a packaging, like making a cover looks, you got to bring the eyes into here. And so he took a lot of his inspiration from that into his clothing design, his shoe design and stuff. And so my buddy Andy Choi was able to work. He's been working with Jeff for a couple of years, and so we connected together. And he's like, hey, they've got this idea. And so then I put together this like, well, what if we take what he's doing here, what we're doing here at eBay, let's put these 2 things together. And so we built out this project that now we're started off at San Diego. We're going to continue it into New York Comic Con. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm back in the world of like building a program, seeing how it goes, and then taking it to completion. And it's really exciting to kind of be able to kind of do that on my own, and get to do things that are like, this is something I really enjoy. Like I love,
Yeah.
even though I don't look at it, I only wear gray t-shirts and shorts, but I love fashion. I love design. I love all that stuff too. So being able to find a way to kind of pull those things together and do it. And it's exciting to kind of take the next stuff to the next level, look at what Vault did, right? So they've got Post Malone doing a comic book, big rig, like taking stuff from outside and bringing it into what we have here is a great way to expand our audience and get new eyeballs. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that kind of crossover stuff as we merge the entertainment portion with the commerce portion of what we're doing in this business, and all that
Yeah.
stuff kind of bleeds together. We're going to see a lot more of that, I believe.
Yeah. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Where do you think the world of comics publishing, like if you're still there and you're looking around those corners now, do you see it as just this direct to consumer, or is there like, where are those, what should comics publishers be thinking about for
Dude.
that next generation?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I mean, you look at guys like Brian Polito, right? So Brian,
Yeah.
Coffee Comics, like he's got his own like direct to consumer thing. He's got his core audience who loves his stuff. They go see him every year at San Diego Comic Con. They have their own little convention. And he was doing all this stuff on Kickstarter to the point where he was so successful at his Kickstarter. He's like, I'm going to make my own crowdfunding platform so
Yeah.
I can keep that extra 10% to myself. Like, bro, that's insane, right? Like,
Yeah.
the hiccups that we had during the pandemic with the Diamond shutting down for a little bit, and then Lunar and what was the Midtown one? What was it called? What they were called, the Midtown
Oh,
distribution thing like that when they popped up?
like UCBS or something.
No, something like that. Yeah. So when those
Yeah.
guys popped in there for a little bit, and then everyone's like, "Oh, how do we do this stuff?" And then now we see like a couple years later, the whole Diamond Fallout stuff. Then you got like guys like Nick Brucher, like, "What am I doing? Like, I don't have books here. I don't have control of what I've got. I don't know how I'm going to get my stuff out there." I think it is really important to find a way that you, as a publisher, can also do a direct to consumer, but also keep your retail partners in the same sync, because you don't want to like forsake all the comic shops, because they are the lifeblood of this industry. Like, they are the lifeblood of getting stuff to consumers still. Like, even though there is like live platforms and there's people who got a bigger reach, like people still do go to the comic shop to get their books, right? There's still guys on Wednesdays or Thursdays and they're picking their stuff up. So I think there's a way that you bleed those two together. I think that we've seen a couple kind of smaller ideas pop up of like, how can you be a publisher, do bigger distribution, but then also do smaller direct to consumer, but also direct to store. How do you feed store stuff directly from yourself? And it's, I think we had Nick Brucci on Beyond Wednesdays recently, and it's like we talked about like how insanely hard it is to be a publisher, but then also you would have to have your own fulfillment team to deal the ship out to comic shops on a weekly basis. Like, that's insane, and not everyone can pull that off, and that's why the distributor model is so vital to what we do. But I think that there is going to be a way. I'm not saying there will be a way to feed both beasts at the same time.
I think so too.
Yeah.
You mentioned Dan at Skybound earlier, and I wanted to take a moment because I like anytime I have an opportunity to talk about her, I want to do that, and I kind of want to do a little smash cut of the people who get a chance to talk to. Will you tell us who was Elena Salcedo, and why is she important to people who have never met her?
Man, how do you put that much into such a little body? Elena was she was a firebrand. She was, I think she was like VP of sales over at Top Cow, was what her title was, but she was like bigger than the title. She was such an integral part of what Top Cow did for so many years. And honestly, like the amount of people that she brought into Top Cow as like, she like loved this person's art. We should do a variant cover with them. Let's do this, whatever. Like, I think a lot of credit does need to go to her for a lot of the stuff that they did. And look, it's never just one person, but like, she was such an integral part. And she's also like I said, like with me early on, like you become a face of a company when you're at conventions or whatever. And so like, everyone goes to the show, like you see Elena, she's there, she's selling you books, she's telling you about this new cool thing. Like, she's always that person. So like, it was weird. Like, I walking by that booth this year was, I'm gonna get a little emotional right now, but it was like really tough to like walk by there and see that she's not there, even though it is Top Cow and then the crew that's there or whatever, but like something's missing, and shout out to Dan for, Dan was with me for most of the weekend. He kind of worked at my booth for me while I was doing the eBay live stuff. And, and it's hard, man. You sit there and like, every 20 minutes somebody walks by the booth and it's like, hey, Dan, and it's like, you gotta go and say hi. And you give your, I'm sorry's and I love her and I miss her and stuff like that. And it's like a really tough thing, so.
I know I had that moment this year where I saw Dan in the bar and I was like, I saw Dan and immediately I'm like, Elena's not here.
Yeah. It's like, how do you say, it's so hard to lose somebody, and we've lost so many people in this industry, and it's like, it's, the thing will always move on, but it's never the same, right? You're always missing a piece, and it's a tough one. So, rest in peace, Elena. We really miss you.
Amen. Who is the most underrated creator working today?
That's a great question. Oh my God, that's so tough. Why do you you said I'm gonna bring it down, then you're like, I'm gonna drive you into the ground with a thing. Dude, honestly, I think that underrated. That's a hard one. I'm sorry, I'm really, really stuck right now.
Oh, it's all right. It's okay if you're stuck. I got another one of these.
Oh God, you got another one? Jesus.
That's a good one.
Tony Fleece. I think Tony.
Oh yeah.
Tony is this dude, man, where it's like he does so many cool things, and I don't think people really understand like how smart of a dude he is.
Yeah.
You know, I man, local man, I was like, where did this come from? And I'm like, God damn, how can it be such a good, like, how do I say this right? I want to say it's like a good homage to the 90s comics, but then also like seems so contemporary and so well put out. And then at the same time, he's able to do like this amazing stuff on, Feral and Stray Dogs. And you're like, oh my God, like this is a two sides thing. And I've had conversations with them, dude. Like, I don't know how you're not like doing such bigger things at other publishers. Like this guy, I mean, if there is someone at Marvel you see tapping in, you're like, you guys should really pick his brain to do some big stuff. Like I think he could bring a lot to, a lot to either company and the IPs that you have. Like I one time we had lunch and I, because I'm friends with David Harper and he's a big Stiltman fan. And we were just shooting the shit. I was like, all right, give me your pitch for a Stiltman comic. And like, he looked at me and he was like, okay. And he just, bam, popped in this story. And I was like, I'd freaking read that book. And he's like, and this is how you do it. And then this is the point where, this is the turn. And I was like, oh my God, that's the greatest idea ever. I was like, that is so cool. Like, I was like, I would absolutely read that book. So like, yeah, Tony is probably my guy,
The fact that you ended it with the David Harper story, I'm going to let that one be the end because I was talking to David. David Harper is the reason I was late for our interview.
Always Harper! Damn it, kid.
How should people find you? What would you like? Anything else that we'd like to cover before we end this?
Yeah, dude, just find me at Big Clutch on most everything. I do eBay lives a couple times a week. Weirdly enough, I don't know when this goes up, but tonight I've got a really big one. Check. Can I show you something real quick on camera?
Yeah, let's go.
This. So this is a 4-ounce piece of silver that is like a sketch coin. So this is a Tyler Kirkham sketch. I've got this 4-ounce Nathan Zerdy sketch. This is an eBay project. These are like little 1-ounce like ingots. This is like a Ryan Otley. So these are something that like goes back to the consumer products part. This is something I'm working with eBay on to do these little sketch coin thing idea.
Is this yours?
It's theirs. Jacob over at eBay came up with this idea, and I was like, as soon as he mentioned it, I was like, dude, I love it. Like, I was like, let's do something with it. So we did these for Comic-Con, and so I got some sketches, and I'm gonna auction these off and see what they do. And PCB Hobby did an auction with a couple of them with Sajad Shah. Like, it's such a cool idea. And like, I love those guys too, because like they're like, how can we create something new to do on our side and stuff, and working with those guys has been awesome. So it's super fun.
There's so many things that you have done, so many things that you guys did at Skybound, so many things you're doing now are things that we were trying or to find a handle on, and you found a way to make it work. It's almost annoying and inspiring, and it also makes me want to get ahead of you.
I mean, please do. I always felt like I was like, when, I think one of our first times we ever met was like at a Comics Pro, and I think when you guys had just kind of, Valiant was just coming back in the thing, and
yeah.
you I was always so jealous because you're like, I called every single retailer on the Diamond Comics list, and I was like, holy crap, dude, you did what now? That sounds awesome and miserable at the same time.
And it was.
But you did, like, you like called like 2,000 comic shops, and I was like, damn, I want to do that, but I will never do that. So good on you for doing that. Right? Like that thing, I always appreciated you and looked up to you for that, because like
thank you, man.
You've always had like this great connection, to the retailer space, and always understood like how to talk with the deal with them. And, having this show that this interview series has been always great. I love watching it. I watch it at 2 times speed. So you have a much lower voice than I thought you normally did, which is really kind of weird. But being able to kind of come on here, I really thank you for having me on. This has been really cool, and keep doing this, because it's needed. People need to have these conversations. So it's really cool.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks so much for tuning in, Comic Industry Insiders. Please check us out on Comics Industry Insiders Live. Check out Big Clutch. We didn't even cover why you're named Big Clutch. That was on my list, and I can't even believe we didn't do it, but I got to go. All right. Thank you so much. Please check us out. Please subscribe. Please hit like. Please hit the alert buttons on all of his stuff, not mine. I don't care, really. All right.
You do.
Thanks, Shawn. We'll talk to you soon, buddy. Namaste, y'all.